Avco Cup, and Avco Cup has asked, could you give a scout's perspective about the proposed change to a remote draft? Are there any positives or negatives the change could have for the scouting community? Okay, so I'm a writer. I'm not a scout, but obviously I cover the draft and evaluate the players. In terms of the remote draft, there's a couple of critical things that I think are going to change that teams are going to have to contend with. The number one thing that I think is there are a lot of meetings that happen right around the draft. A lot of person to person in front, face to face meetings that happen at the draft. Players often will arrive days early. They'll get there, and teams can still do this. They can still send a contingent to wherever the draft might be, set up a conference room at a hotel, and have some of these meetings if they so choose. Most teams are not going to be swayed a ton by this, but there have been a couple of examples where teams said, we were a little on the fence. We got that face-to-face meeting. We got the assurances that we needed, and we made the pick. So that's one thing that I think is a legitimate change that will potentially be negative for the draft and for the scouts themselves. The other thing is just kind of when you're there, you start hearing a lot. Like the scout rumor mill gets going, and that actually is the most accurate, typically in my experience, most accurate around the draft floor, because you start hearing a little bit more. Well, this team likes this guy. Like, I remember a couple years back, you'd hear from all over that this team was going to draft this player, and then sure enough, it happens, and that's an interesting kind of dynamic. So you kind of wonder about how does that decision process change a little bit when everybody's in the same room. Sure, there's probably things that you overhear, or maybe you see, or you try to read things, and that will be lost as well. But I don't think that happens as much on the draft floor, so that and keep in mind, other sports don't have this problem. They don't have everybody at the same place. So there could actually be competitive advantages to being decentralized for these teams, especially the teams that are more secretive, that don't want anybody to have even an inkling of what they're doing. They'll be able to do that with some privacy. Now, I do hope that every single TV network has cameras all over those draft rooms. And if you guys want to provide a live feed of those rooms, that would be awesome. Although I don't think that's allowed, so probably won't get that. But those are some of the things that I think with the draft are interesting to discuss in terms of what it means between the centralized draft and the decentralized draft.